Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. I think it's pretty clear from everything we've been seeing that 2024 was just wild for global trade, right? I mean, disruptions everywhere you looked.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone was really prepared for the kind of volatility we saw across the board.
But you know what's interesting? In the middle of all that chaos, there were some companies that actually thrived. Not just survived, but thrived.
Yeah, that's right. They seem to have the knack for staying ahead of the curve, anticipating disruptions instead of just reacting to them.
And that's what we're going to dig into today. How do they do it? And more importantly, what can we learn from them?
It really comes down to a fundamental shift from reactive to proactive strategies.
Right. Let's talk about that shift. What exactly changed in 2024 that made this kind of proactivity so essential?
I think one of the biggest changes was the realization that all those disruptions we saw, they weren't just temporary blips. This is the new reality. Geopolitical tensions, threats to critical infrastructure, persistent supply chain volatility, it's all here to stay.
So it's not just about bouncing back faster anymore. It's about anticipating the next hit before it even lands.
Exactly. And we saw that play out in so many ways last year. Take the International Longshoremen's Association strike, for example. The tension around automation, it had ripple effects far beyond just labor negotiations.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the labor side of things either, right? I mean, Mother Nature seemed to be throwing everything she had at us.
No kidding. Typhoons, hurricanes causing billions in damage, floods, wildfires, you name it. It seemed like every week brought a new challenge.
It definitely felt that way sometimes. And each event had this domino effect, creating delays, shutting down ports, just throwing the whole system into disarray.
And driving costs up at every step of the way. It was a tough year for a lot of companies.
Absolutely. But as we said, some companies actually managed to thrive in this environment. So what was their secret? What set them apart from those who struggled?
They understood the power of early detection. It's the difference between knowing a hurricane is out there somewhere and knowing exactly how it's going to impact your specific shipments, your suppliers, your customers, even your bottom line.
So it's not just about getting information, it's about getting the right information at the right time.
Precisely. And then being able to act on that information before it's too late.
Which brings up another question. How are these companies getting this kind of early insight? I mean, it sounds almost like a sixth sense, knowing what's going to happen before it actually does.
It's all about harnessing the power of AI.
I've heard a lot of buzz about generative AI lately. Can you break down what it is and how it's being used in this context?
Sure. Think of it as having a team of superpower analysts working for you around the clock. They're constantly scanning for potential disruptions, analyzing vast amounts of data from all sorts of sources.
So it's not just about getting alerts, it's about understanding the why behind those alerts. Why does this particular disruption matter to my business? What are the potential consequences?
Exactly. And even more importantly, what can I do about it? Generative AI can actually recommend specific actions you can take to mitigate the risk. Alternative routes, different suppliers, adjusting production schedules, things like that.
So it's like having a personalized advisor tailored to your specific business and your specific vulnerabilities.
That's a great way to put it. And that's really the key here. It's not just about reacting faster, it's about being proactive, anticipating disruptions, and taking action before they even become a problem.
And I imagine that's especially important when it comes to those unknown unknowns, the things you don't even know to look out for.
Absolutely. Those are often the ones that hit us the hardest. And generative AI can help us uncover those hidden risks, the things we might not even be aware of.
It's fascinating stuff, and it definitely paints a different picture of how we need to approach risk management in this new landscape. All right, so we've been talking about this shift from reactive to proactive risk management and how AI is playing a crucial role. But I'm curious, what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal is predictive analytics. It takes those early warning signals we were talking about and uses AI to model different scenarios and their potential consequences.
So it's kind of like running simulations to see how a particular disruption might play out.
Exactly. Imagine this. You get an alert that tensions are rising in a key shipping lane like the Red Sea. Predictive analytics can show you which of your shipments are most likely to be delayed, which customers might be impacted, even recommend alternative routes or suppliers.
So you're not just reacting to a problem, you're actually anticipating it and taking steps to mitigate the risk before it even happens.
That's the idea, and it goes beyond just minimizing losses. It's about identifying opportunities.
So you're turning risk into a competitive advantage. I like it.
Exactly. In today's environment, risk is unavoidable. But by embracing proactivity, we can not only mitigate those risks, but also uncover hidden opportunities.
That makes a lot of sense. But as we've discussed, shifting to a more proactive mindset is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. What are some of the hurdles companies might face along the way?
One of the biggest challenges is internal. overcoming resistance to change, getting people comfortable with new ways of doing things.
That we've always done it this way mentality.
Exactly. And to overcome that, you need strong leadership, clear communication, and a commitment to continuous learning. It's also important to manage expectations. Implementing these proactive strategies takes time and resources. There's no magic bullet.
So patience and persistence are key.
Absolutely. It's a process, but it's a process that can pay off big time in the long run.
This has been incredibly insightful, and I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about the specific tools and technologies that can support this journey towards proactivity.
Great point. Let's dive into some of the platforms and solutions that companies should be exploring.
Okay, so let's talk about those tools and technologies. You mentioned platforms and solutions that companies should be exploring. Where do we even begin?
Well, I'd say the foundation of any proactive risk management strategy is a solid combination of early detection systems and predictive analytics.
We touched on those earlier. Can you remind us how they work together?
Sure, early detection systems are like your eyes and ears on the ground. They're constantly scanning for potential disruptions, pulling in data from all sorts of sources, weather patterns, port congestion, social media chatter, you name it.
So it's not just about knowing that a typhoon is forming in the Pacific. It's about understanding what that typhoon might mean for my specific business.
Exactly, and that's where predictive analytics comes in.
It sounds incredibly powerful, being able to anticipate those ripple effects before they even happen.
It is, and the beauty of it is the more data you feed these systems, the smarter they get.
So it's a continuous learning process.
Absolutely, but even with the most sophisticated systems in place, there will always be those unforeseen events that no one could have predicted.
So what do we do about those? How do we prepare for the unpredictable?
That's where resilience comes in. It's about having backup plans, diversifying your supplier base, establishing alternative transportation routes, having that flexibility to adapt quickly when the unexpected happens.
So it's like having a plan B or even a plan C ready to go.
Exactly. And AI can actually help you identify potential vulnerabilities in your supply chain and stress test your systems so you can make sure you're prepared for whatever comes your way.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation, and it's clear that proactivity is no longer a nice-to-have, but a must-have in today's world. As we wrap up, is there any final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I'd just say the future of global trade belongs to those who embrace proactivity. It's about leveraging the power of technology, fostering a culture of anticipation, and collaborating across the supply chain to navigate the uncertainties that lie ahead.
Well said. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of proactive global trade. Keep learning, keep innovating, and keep thriving.